Round 2, fight.
Your party is actually openly advocating adding seats to the Supreme Court, which has had 9 seats for 150 years, if you don't get your way. This is a classic case of if you can't win by the rules, you're going to change the rules. Now, you've refused to answer the question. Joe Biden has refused to answer the question. So I think the American people would really like to know, if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States, are you and Joe Biden, if somehow you win this election, going to pack the Supreme Court to get your way?
There is no fixed number in the Constitution, so this court has had as few as 5, as many as 10. 9 seems to be a good number, and it's been that way for a long time. I have heard that there are some people on the Democratic side who would like to increase the number of judges. I think that was a bad idea when President Franklin Delano Roosevelt tried to pack the court. His plan was for every justice who stays on the court past the age of 70, the president would have authority to nominate another justice. If that plan had been effective, the court's number would have swelled immediately from 9 to 15, and the president would have 6 appointments to make. You mentioned before the court appearing partisan. Well, if anything would make the court appear partisan, it would be that. One side saying, when we're in power, we're going to enlarge the number of judges, so we will have more people who will vote the way we want them to. So I am not at all in favor.
Voting right now, they'd like to know if you and Joe Biden are going to pack the Supreme Court if you don't get your way in this nomination.
Let's talk about packing.
You once again gave a non-answer. Joe Biden gave a non-answer.
Trying to answer you
the
now.
American people deserve a straight answer. And if you haven't figured it out yet, the straight answer is they are going to pack the Supreme Court.
Yeah, let's talk about packing the court then. Let's talk about the fact. Yeah, I'm about to.
Know my opinion of court packing when the election is over. Now look, I know it's a great question, and I don't blame you for asking it. But you know, the moment I answer that question, the headline in every one of your papers will be about that.
President Trump appointed to the Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments. Not one is black. This is what they've been doing. You want to talk about packing a court? Let's have that discussion.
When there is a vacancy on the Supreme Court, the President of the United States is to nominate someone. The Senate is to consider that nomination, and either they disapprove of that nominee or that nominee is elevated to the Supreme Court. Historically, this has not been viewed as a question. There's no unwritten law that says that it can only be done on off years. That's not in the constitutional text. That's not in the constitutional text. I'm amused when I hear people who claim to be strict interpreters of the Constitution suddenly reading into it a whole series of provisions that are not there. There is more than enough time for the Senate to consider in a thoughtful way the record of a nominee that I present and to make a decision.
Of racial justice.
I just want the record to reflect she never answered the question.
In March, Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency room technician in Louisville, was shot and killed after police officers executing a search warrant in a narcotics investigation broke into her apartment. The police said they identified themselves. Taylor's boyfriend said he didn't hear them do that. He used a gun registered to him to fire a shot, which wounded an officer. The officers then fired more than 20 rounds into the apartment. They say they were acting in self-defense. None of them have been indicted in connection with her death. Senator Harris, in the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes.
I don't believe so. And I've talked with Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, and her family. And her family deserves justice. She was a beautiful young woman. She had as her life goal to become a nurse, and she wanted to become an EMT to first learn what's going on out on the street so she could then become a nurse and save lives. And her life was taken unjustifiably and tragically and violently. And it brings me to, you know, the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that America witnessed, during which an American man was tortured and killed under the knee of an armed, uniformed police officer. And people around our country of every race, of every age, of every gender, perfect strangers to each other, marched shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, fighting for us to finally achieve that ideal of equal justice under law. And I was a part of those peaceful protests.
The video begins with hundreds of protesters marching down Columbus seemingly peacefully, and then at some point before they reach the statue, a small number of those protesters break away and are shielded by others as they change into all black and use black umbrellas to shield themselves. It was at this point, police say, that the protest turned violent. Projectiles, including frozen water bottles and firecrackers, were being tossed at those officers who were near the statue on the scene. Those officers seemingly unprepared for this violent turn in what happened there. 49 officers injured, 18 of them taken to the hospital, including, we're told, a police sergeant who has serious injuries to his eye socket and to his kneecap. Today, the police superintendent says he is going to make sure that never catches police off guard again.
Vice President Pence, let me pose the same question to you. In the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Well, our heart breaks for the loss of any innocent American life. And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies. But I trust our justice system, a grand jury that refused the evidence. And it really is remarkable that as a former prosecutor, you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all the evidence got it wrong. But you're entitled to your opinion, Senator. I think, look, and with regard to George Floyd, there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. And justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting that followed.
So it was quiet here for just a couple minutes, and now the Phoenix Police Department has gotten back on the loudspeaker telling people to disperse immediately, and that is...
Rebecca, right the fucking up! Section 509. If you are on Broadway, northbound Broadway, on Main Street. If you are on that street.
Plain truth of the matter is, this has to stop, and it has to stop like the day before yesterday. And it's going to be stopped, whatever it takes.
I would like to propose that the issue is that on the campuses, you, who are adults, you who are entrusted with those young people and their guidance, have a responsibility to make it plain to them from the very beginning that you yourselves do not tolerate the kind of conduct or speech of that kind.
Those who would trade our freedom for the soup kitchen of the welfare state have told us they have a utopian solution of peace without victory. They call their policy accommodation. And they say if we'll only avoid any direct confrontation with the enemy, he'll forget his evil ways and learn to love us. All who oppose them are indicted as warmongers. But every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery.
I mean, it really is astonishing. Flora Westbrook is with us here tonight in Salt Lake City. Just a few weeks ago, I stood at what used to be her salon. It was burned to the ground by rioters and looters. And Flora is still trying to put her life back together.
We are 100 days after your place was torched. And how much help have you gotten from your local and state officials?
I haven't got anything, not a penny.
And you are heartbroken because you always figured if I had trouble, and we're looking at the images, your place was torched on May 29th. If I have trouble and I pick up the phone, the police are going to come and they're going to help me, or the fire department is going to help me. And when you needed them most, they weren't there.
No, they wasn't. No.
So
they never showed up.
Yeah.
I didn't see any police at all patrol around my area. No.
So to add insult to injury, and we're looking at the images of your place, which was destroyed, and you've been out of business, and you were already struggling with COVID. The city now has torn down your building because they said essentially the building was severely damaged in the fire and the front wall was at risk of collapsing onto the sidewalk because of that danger that posed. The city had the wall knocked down to protect the public. So they knocked it down to protect the public. And Flora, they're sending you the bill, aren't they?
That's correct. That is correct.
And how much is that going to cost you?
It's going to cost me, that bill is going to be over $200,000 just for tearing things down and, you know, putting up a fence there. So it's going to be lots of money that I can't afford, that I don't have.
And we're not even talking about rebuilding. We're just talking about the cost of tearing it down. I mean, they're talking about they want more money than you make in a year to pay for the building that was destroyed because you were not protected. Am I getting this story wrong?
Yes. No, you're not. You are right on point. No, you're not.
Shortly after your business was torched and the riots and the looting and all those things, Amy Klobuchar showed up, the Governor Walz showed up, and they had sad faces, but they didn't really tell you we're going to help you, did they?
No, they did not.
And I must tell you, this presumption that you hear consistently from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that America is systemically racist, and that, as Joe Biden said, that he believes that law enforcement has an implicit bias against minorities, is a great insult to the men and women who serve in law enforcement. And I want everyone to know, who puts on the uniform of law enforcement every day, that President Trump and I stand with you. And it is remarkable that when Senator Tim Scott tried to pass a police reform bill, brought together a group of Republicans and Democrats, Senator Harris, you got up and walked out of the room. And then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate floor that would have provided new accountability, new resources. Look, we don't have to choose between supporting law enforcement, improving public safety, and supporting our African American neighbors and all of our minorities. Under President Trump's leadership, we'll always stand with law enforcement, and we'll do what we've done from day one, and that is improve the lives of African Americans.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
Record unemployment, record investments in education, and we'll fight for school choice for all of our members.
Thank you.
And the reality of this is that we are talking about an election in 27 days, where last week the President of the United States took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists.
Not true.
And
not true.
It wasn't like he didn't have a chance. He didn't do it, and then he doubled down. This is a part of a pattern of Donald Trump's.
You see, in the good old days, law enforcement acted a lot quicker than this. A lot quicker. In the good old days, they'd rip him out of that seat so fast. But today, everybody's politically correct. Our country's going to hell with being politically correct. In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy.
President Trump denounced white supremacy today.
I have to say, I've said it many times, and let me be clear again, I condemn the KKK. I condemn all white supremacists.
Joe Biden is out there all day today saying you've never condemned white nationalists, you just did. You've never condemned segregation, as you just did. You've never condemned the KKK, you have. And you've never condemned David Duke. You are condemning all of them tonight.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups.
Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing.
FBI director
This
said
is a left-wing problem.
White supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got to be
not
kidding.
militia. That's what his FBI. His FBI director said.
Well, and Sarah Ganim now takes us inside Antifa and shows us this group like you've never seen it before.
It's 6 a.m. in Portland, Oregon, and we're headed to a bar with blacked out windows. They wanted to meet us really early in the morning because they're concerned about a lot of people being around. We are meeting members of the Rose City Antifa, short for anti-fascist. This group's main goal is to disrupt neo-Nazis and white supremacists, but also take on government and capitalism.
Antifa is any group that's willing to stand up against fascists by any means necessary.
By any means necessary, they say, can mean outing a white nationalist at their work or to their neighbors. Or, as we've seen recently, violence, fires, property damage, hand-to-hand combat at protests across the country. Explain to me the reasoning behind fighting.
You have to make it so unpalatable to be doing white supremacist organizing that they no longer want to do that. And historically, that's what's worked. You have to put your body in the way, and you have to make it speak in a language that they understand, and sometimes that is violence.
There's no firm number on how many Antifa activists there are in the U.S. because there isn't any one organization. Most are local groups that recruit and communicate through social media. But experts who track these organizations say their membership is growing in response to the rise of white national groups and the election of President Donald Trump. Violence and property destruction led to more than 200 arrests in Washington, D.C. on Inauguration Day. Prosecutors say they were wearing masks covered head to toe in black, a tactic the Antifa call Black Bloc.
People dress in Black Bloc for a few things. One,
Scott Crow has been leading anarchist and militant leftist groups for decades.
so people put on the masks so that we can all become anonymous. And then therefore we are able to move more freely and do what we need to do, whether it is illegal or not.
So some people will push back on that and say that the Black Bloc is to keep people from being identified and arrested when they break the law, when they commit crimes.
Damn right. It's a good way to avoid the ramifications of law enforcement.
What to do when your tax base flees your city? If you're the left-wing lurch, you promise to tax whoever stays more.
You really want to change things in this city? Then everyone better change a lot of the way we live more foundationally. If you just talk about it and feel self-satisfied, God bless you. That's not actually going to change things. What changes things is redistribution of wealth. Tax the wealthy at a much higher level. And I just feel like this is a lot of cocktail party comfort going on rather than people honestly dealing with this issue. Help me tax the wealthy. Help me redistribute wealth. Help me build affordable housing in white communities if you want desegregation.
This is what happens when you elect a commie who can't do math. Not only do they spread deadly beliefs, they can't even pay for them. It's the downward spiral of leftism, dragging everyone down with it. And here's how it's done. 1, take over a city that was kicking butt thanks to Republicans. 2, reverse policies that created the success and enact those that foster disaster. 3, funnel the money to pet projects instead of improving quality of life. 4, very important, vilify police, which drives early retirements way up and recruitment way down. 5, drive out investment due to uncertainty, fear, and regulation. 6, when people leave, tax who's ever dumb enough to still be here, me. Watch the tax base evaporate. Bonus points, do this during a pandemic. So, I gotta ask, why are we still here? I don't understand it. When city leaders can't protect us as stores are looted and burned, and then they deny reality afterwards. I did a 1-minute search, thousands of articles with statistics showing sharp, persistent increases in violent crime. But in NYC alone, murders up 34%, shootings 87%, burglaries 43%, and people are home. I could cite specifics: children shot dead, madmen attacking people with bricks and spears, and attempted daytime rape in a safe subway spot. I could go on, but who's listening? Not the Dems or their mouthpieces who mocked this misery.
Democratic cities are in chaos right now. Is this what you want from Joe Biden? And they're going to take your country away, and they're taking down the statues. And
Crime is rising as they defund police.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad. And they get defunding police. It's like.
Now, 6 weeks later, how their tune has changed.
I think Democrats are ignoring this problem or hoping that it will go away. Joe Biden may be afraid to do it. I'm not sure. Maybe he won't. Maybe he is. He's got to address it. What's happening now is happening under Donald Trump's watch. The rioting has to stop. Chris, as you know and I know, it's showing up in the polling. It's showing up in focus groups. It is the only thing right now that is sticking.
Wow, that's amnesia. My how things change, though, when it impacts them politically, which is why the only way to make them care is to call them out, then throw the politicians out, or leave for saner parts. Tennessee, Idaho, Wyoming. Just don't bring your left-wing BS with you. Part of America still needs to function.
And if you thought Joe Biden would finally tell us where he stands on court packing, think again.
Sir, I've got to ask you about packing the courts. This is the #1 thing that I've been asked about from viewers.
Well, you've been asked by the viewers who are probably Republicans who don't want me continuing to talk about what they're doing to the court right now.
Well, sir, don't the voters deserve to know where you stand?